I'm Lexi Davis, a love embodiment coach who helps people create a love that feels like home, and I'm here to bring more romance and playfulness into the world. I'm also an international retreat host, vibe curator, and human connector. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this podcast where I invite guests from around the world to sprinkle their wisdom and expand your perspective so you can create the deepest love you possibly can reach in this lifetime. I also want you to live the most joyous life, whatever that looks like to you, and I hope that this slice of the internet brings you lots of smiles and helps you keep your heart open. Thank you for choosing Heart Snuggles to be in your ears each week, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Welcome, Heart Snugglers. We hope you're having a beautiful day, and I'm really excited to have Luci here with us. She is such a beautiful inspiration of love and embodiment, and I just love seeing you and hearing about everything. And so I would love if you would go ahead and introduce yourself and share a little bit about you.
Sure, yes. So I'm Luci Lampe and I live in the San Diego area in California and with my husband and our four kids. And well, I tend to do a lot of work in the realm of, wild feminine embodiment and sexual liberation and healing and sacred union. So a lot of this, well, really the whole thing about what I'm even doing in my life and in my work was directly a result of my own life journey. So a lot of a big catalyst for us in our journey was that period of time, about 2.5 years, where Ryan went through depression and disability, and that was a big spiritual awakening for us both. I also developed an autoimmune disorder during that time and was pregnant with our fourth child. And there were just a lot of things happening in life that led to this really, really, really tough season. And yeah, that was a big initiation, a big catalyst. And there have been others, but that's like there's like a before and after, a distinct mile marker in our journey together and in my own. And that's definitely a big one. But yeah, I'm an open book. I'm excited to talk about all the different things of spirituality, sexuality, relationships, wild woman stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really enjoy it. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I want to dive a little bit more into your story because I think it's so beautiful, and things that we don't see online enough is you just see this, relationship where it's at now, but people don't understand that it wasn't always like that. So, uh,
Right.
but the first question is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Oh, random acts of kindness. I feel like they happen a lot. I feel like when I started to randomly do them myself, they started to happen more. I started to maybe just notice them more. I would have to say it was Ryan bringing me something to drink. That's very simple things, but that adds a lot to the relationship.
Yeah, no, I love those moments. That's why I love this question, because it just reminds of like that little drink, it brings just us so much joy in that moment. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
Like, oh,
Thank
you thought of me. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, the best feeling thinking, knowing you're being thought of. And then other question we always start with is, what is a shameful memory you have around sex or love from your journey?
Mhm. My very first memory, my very first conscious memory that doesn't feel like it was a dream. You know how when you're really little, it kind of feels like, oh, was this a dream or did this really happen? But my first conscious memory was actually of being in the back seat of my car. And I think my mom and my brother went into the store into something, and my dad was in the driver's seat, and I was in the back, and I was maybe like 4. I was young, and I was bored, and I just started touching myself, and he was like, "Ew, what are you doing?" Like, just disgusting, and I just wanted to disappear into the crack of the seat.
Mm.
So that was actually a really impactful memory that didn't come up until I started to really unpack all of the stuff around sexuality, and I hadn't realized how much that shaped how I perceive my body. So, yeah, that's the first one.
That's wild that you can remember that from when you were 4, and it's
Yeah.
so crazy too how our body stores that, and that imprints like our sexual journey. So I would love to hear a little bit about like how you've where you started with it, now you're this extremely liberated, beautiful woman. So where did it begin? And how did you kind of land where you are now?
Oh, okay. Well, also I was a pastor's daughter and I was raised very conservatively. So there were a lot of different layers added to that. That was just the first kind of big imprint that I remember, right? When I started to do my self-pleasure practice, that's really when things started to change. And this was some years ago now. But before that, I was comfortable doing meditation and maybe doing yoga, doing more embodied things, but pleasuring myself. I was like, no, I'm not one of these women that needs to masturbate. I would just kind of, talk myself into getting excited about sex. And God bless Ryan, because he was always so patient. He's always been such a patient, generous lover. But when your body is closed and you feel ashamed of your own pleasure, there is nothing your lover can do to compensate for that
Mm.
closure. So when I started, I actually got this message during a meditation to begin self-pleasuring every day. And I had to check in. I was like, are you sure? Am I hearing this correctly? Where is this coming from? Like, what? There was a lot of resistance, but that was really the most powerful practice in unraveling all of these internalized feelings, beliefs around my sexuality, my pleasure, my body. So for so many reasons, and I could go, deeper into that, but that practice was really the place where I learned how to receive love and feel pleasure for the sake of pleasure without an agenda, even without even having to make orgasm a goal.
Mm.
And then I started, pole dancing. I started doing more just sensual floor movements and taking dance classes. And all of that has shaped that or allowed that free flowing erotic energy, which is not just sexual. People get this mixed up a lot. They're like, oh, does that mean that people are hypersexual if they're really sexually liberated? No, it's that you're in your true sexual essence, your true erotic nature, which is you are just making love to life. You're
Mm.
feeling turned on and just in that flow in anything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be sexual. But yeah, those were some key steps in my journey.
I think that's so good. I remember too when I didn't even know women could masturbate. I thought it was just for
Yeah.
men. And so when I found out I could, I was like, no, I'm just gonna wait till yeah. So it's
I'll
so
let somebody else do it for me.
yeah, yeah. And I think that it's so cool that you just decided every day, okay, I'm gonna commit to this and start to build this relationship with myself. And so many
Yeah.
of us women are disconnected completely from our wombs. We don't even have a relationship with her, which is like, and it's the most powerful
Yeah.
part of our bodies.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so there is so much that was the magic switch. And for that first year that I did this practice, I think there were only maybe 3 days out of the entire first year that I didn't do it.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I didn't set out like I'm going to do this for 365 days. It was just I'm devoted to this, I'm it's a devotional act to love.
Mm.
And there was so much healing there.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Wow.
really transformational.
Yeah, and that devotion I think is something that's like I love that practice of devotion. And how do you think someone can start to cultivate that? Because I don't think our society is really devotional. Well, I think at
Yeah.
our cores we do want that, but it's not really there.
Mhm.
So,
I think we use self-discipline as kind of an alternative for it, which for a lot of us, as we begin to connect more spiritually, sensually, erotically, there's a resistance to the discipline, right? Because it's like we don't want to force things, we don't want to like make it happen. We want to be more in flow and more of this like feminine energy embodiment space. And what's interesting about because I went through that as well. And I don't want structure. I don't want to have to be bound to a schedule. But it's actually that devotional container that we show up to that creates the freedom.
mhm.
And when I started to simply look at it as a ritualizing things, like this is my ritual for this or that, making it ceremonial, making it a devotional, worshipful act, it changed the energy behind it instead of because I was a very self-disciplined person. I used to run 80 to 100 miles a week. I used to do jujitsu and learn all these things and work, work, work. Even when I didn't need to work, I would create more work.
Mhm.
Yeah, there was a lot there. I was trying to avoid a lot of feeling. So when I started to let myself feel and created the space to feel, that is so important. So I think just making that little shift in how we perceive what we're doing makes a really big difference.
Yeah, it's always so interesting how just a simple word switch can do so much for our bodies and our way of being. It's like, oh, a
Yeah.
ritual instead of it feels so much better, but it
Instead of
works.
a routine, it's even, like my morning ritual. I think of it as my morning rituals I do every morning.
Mhm.
But I had a morning routine for many years before that. But it felt more like I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna conquer the day at 4:30 a.m. I'm going to whole different energy behind it.
Yeah, yes, a lot more feminine, I feel, which is
Yeah.
yum. And I want to know how there's so many questions about you being a mother. Like you have four children, and then you also seem like you are really devoted in your partnership, and you're also expressive in your sexuality. And so how do you navigate that, especially with your background? And and how do your kids see that and respond? And yeah, I'm just so curious about that whole field of
Yeah.
it.
Oh my God, there's so much. We could
I
do a
know.
whole episode just
I
on that.
know.
Let me see. The key nuggets are, well, I guess I'll start with, our older two are in high school. We have three girls and one boy, and the boy's the youngest. So we have two teenage girls. And when they were little, we were very weird about bodies and calling body parts what they are. And there was just a lot of just weirdness, awkwardness. We didn't know even ourselves about things like consent and boundaries. And if a kid doesn't want to hug grandma, they don't have to hug them. Like we just didn't have that mindset back then. It was just do as you're told. And we were very strict with them. By the time we had our younger two, who are now about to turn 8 and 9, things were quite a bit different. And so we have raised them very different. And our teenagers have gotten to heal with us. They
Aw.
have witnessed us growing up, and it's the most amazing thing. They're like such wise, incredible, self-aware teenage girls that do not settle for less than what they are worth. And they're both in relationships now, actually, new, like as of the last few months. We're like, yes, be a part of our family, yes. But they've witnessed the healing, the ruptures, the repairs, me going through my own thing of reclaiming my witchy medicine woman and going in my room and in like, making all my weird sounds and doing all my dancing and just being more happy around them and more free and less judgmental, less critical. So they're like, yeah, this is real, this works. And our younger kids, they have no concept of what it's like to have shame around their bodies or their, body parts and what they're called. And in fact, the other day I was explaining to them one of our family members who was very, very, very conservative. And I said, it's very awkward for this family member when you say this or you talk about that. So it's not that it's bad, it's not wrong, but
Mhm.
this family member grew up in a way that this was not normal. And you're like, what? What? I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know the word for vagina until I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Like what? So yeah, they really don't have a concept of like to them, a mom who pole dances is normal and it's fun and it's acrobatic and you know, there are so many things that we have healed the ancestral traumas
Mm.
in both of our lineages. Of course, there's also a point on what's age appropriate to talk about
Mhm.
and all of that, which you just navigate as you go along. Our teenagers, of course, know a lot more about things than our elementary school kids, but it's more just cultivating that safety where they can talk about things and ask questions and not feel awkward and not feel like there's something wrong with me that I'm curious about this thing.
Yeah, that's the most important thing is that safety. That's all we need as a kid because we're just trying to
Yeah,
just learning, right? We're in these bodies. We're like, what's going on? So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
curious how you navigate like your family probably trying to influence your parenting and what about the parents at the schools seeing how you are? How do you navigate that?
That hasn't really been an issue. Like
Oh,
with the other parents, it's more, I think that when you have a certain presence about you as well, and you show up in integrity with yourself, that takes care of a lot.
mhm.
And if people feel uncomfortable, you can tell that they're uncomfortable, but at the same time, they're like very curious.
Yes.
They're like, I want that too. For family, though, family, yeah, it's definitely been uncomfortable for mostly my side of the family. Ryan's family is very proud of what I do and what we share, and they're engaged in my social media, and
Oh.
they share. His mom's always sharing my posts, and you know, it's so sweet. They're like, we learned so much from you. So his side of the family is really coming along. I'm still healing things in my family. I just recently this year reconnected with my brother, or really connected with him for the first time. Yeah. And most of my family's in Peru. So my family in Peru are big fans. They're like, yeah, we love your pole dancing and your music and your photos and your videos. It's just my more immediate family, more so just my mother.
Mhm.
It's, a work in progress,
Yeah.
but it's no longer a weight on me.
Mm,
That's a big thing.
that's huge. Yeah, because that can feel so uncomfortable having that, knowing that they're there and having those thoughts and trying to be who you are, but then, yeah. So I'm glad you're able to like untangle that and not feel that pressure, or not
Yeah.
pressure, but
It's been some years. Well, that
yeah,
just this feeling of like, I don't want to disappoint mom.
yeah.
But just trusting that the universe has got her. The universe has got her, and she's on her own journey, and she's perfectly where she's meant to be.
Mm-hmm. True acceptance. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. And now I want to backtrack a little bit. So you briefly talked about this like big challenge you guys went through. And I'm curious how you navigated all of that conflict and decided to like really stick to the union and not separate.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot there. I recently, earlier this year, I was on a podcast that we were talking about this specifically, and I said, for me on my journey, I felt like me and the universe had this agreement going into it that I would not leave the marriage to look for peace somewhere else, that I would be able to find it in the chaos, in the wounds and all of this stuff, all the craziness, that if I could find peace there, I could be at peace anywhere.
Mm.
So at that time I was like, challenge accepted. And it was so hard, especially the first year and a half after we both began really doing the work. So initially I came to this low point of I can't do this anymore. I either my environment needs to change or something inside of me needs to change, and I can't change my environment. I mean, I had been trying. I'd sure
Yeah.
been trying. I couldn't change him. I couldn't change just anything. I felt so stuck and helpless. So that really opened me up to looking for different solutions. And I found different like speakers, personal development, emotional intelligence, and I found this little community of people at this event that I felt safe enough for the first time ever to really unbottle my emotions, and that started really the journey. And so within months of that, later that year, Ryan got involved as well and started to just open up and tiptoe in and get involved with the coaching trainings and all that. And yeah, but the first year and a half that we were both really, really in it, it was very messy because we're learning all these coaching tools, we're learning all these emotional intelligence, emotional awareness things, and we're trying to coach each other. And it's like, no, you're projecting, no, you are, no, you're deflecting, no, it was like such a shit show.
Oh
But we
gosh.
just really hung in there. I will say we are very tenacious individuals. But there, I think really deep down there was a deep heart commitment. There
Mm.
was a heart commitment, and in our soul we knew like this is it, this is the thing. And we worked through the hard stuff time again and again and again and again.
Mhm. And so what would you say are like the most effective ways to kind of move through that? Like, what do you use now when something arises like that?
Yeah, well, now we've put in so many reps of it over the years
Yes.
that
Yeah.
it's like, okay, here's what needs to be done. They're in the most, I guess, really esoteric, non-tangible way. What we have learned is that the most important thing is to leave space for the miracle to happen, because there's only so far that the tools can take you,
Mm.
and we can try to contort and control and manipulate and use scripts and try to get a certain outcome. And yeah, that can work for a while. It did for us. But then when you get to a point in your journey where the universe is really initiating you into this deeper union, you realize just how you don't have any control. And what you do have the decision on is Do I surrender my fear, or am I going to just like entangle myself deeper into it? So we like to make acknowledgments on how we hurt each other, because the thing is, we do hurt each other.
Yes.
Even if we just do as human beings, we don't. It might not be malicious. It's not like we want to destroy each other, but we're different people on our journeys and in our different personalities and wants and desires and fears, and we will inevitably hurt each other. So it's really being a big girl, pulling up your big girl pants and being like, you know what, it's not I fucked up. It's not even that. It's not about blame or fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I see your heart and I see that it hurts, and your heart is my heart. And therefore it hurts me when you're hurting. And I I don't want to hurt you. At the same time, sometimes we know that things will just they just had to happen the way that they did. But there's always an acknowledgement and owning up, taking responsibility, accountability, and going through a repair process whenever that comes up.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part is taking that responsibility and acknowledging that because it's we no matter how much work you've done or how long you've been together, like you will hurt each other. And being on that team of like removing that, well, you're wrong or I'm right. And it's just
Yeah.
like,
Trying to
wait,
prove who's right and who's wrong.
oh, I've done that so
It
many
doesn't work.
times. And it's like,
Good.
no, this isn't what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of my clients are working through that right now. With all of this Mars and Scorpio energy, it's like, it's extremely aggressive. They're like, okay, we're angry. It's okay. And that's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to be angry. Let that speak. Let that be felt. But yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Never,
such
never fault blame.
Yeah, never felt blame because I mean that just I feel like that's so inner child of us like feeling that,
Yes.
like when we were blamed and we were told and then it's like, yeah, no one likes that feeling ever.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the inner child, that's actually was a big part of the process for us, was that inner child healing,
Mm.
because we had parentified each other big time, hoping to solve and closure all those wounds with our parents, with each other. So I feel like that's a really important part of the whole process.
Hmm. And how would you like what are some of the ways that it shifted from that?
From doing the inner child work.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, there were some very specific triggers that we each had. Like he would feel ganged up on if I and let's say a family member disagreed. And that was a childhood wound
Mhm.
of having moved around a lot and not really having friends that were very solid, and then feeling, and sometimes kids would gang up on him and beat him up. So that felt really unsafe. So, and I think for me was having when my things were taken away or they were broken or something, because that's what my dad would do when he was mad at me or he was disappointed. He would take my favorite music cassettes back in that time and break them. And I was devastated. I'm like, no, that is my energy source. That's my music. So when we would do something similar to each other that was even perceived in the body as being that, it felt so unsafe. We would get defensive, start lashing out, all the self-protective stuff, right? And then of course hurt each other, say things that we regret, all that. So as we began to heal those wounds and really nourish our inner child and let that inner child be seen in a safe space,
Yeah.
like in the community space, but also with each other, as we learned how to do that, the inner child stopped needing to act out so much.
Mm. And I think it's so beautiful when you understand each other like, okay, this is your inner child. Let me not be triggered right now and let me actually be there for you. And yeah, when we can speak these things to each other, I think that's so powerful. It's like, oh wait, I see what this is. And we have to like zoom out sometimes in those moments.
Yeah.
It can be really hard.
Yeah. Zooming out and seeing also from that place, discerning, are we both acting out right now? And there were just two children talking in adult bodies, or do I have the capacity to really witness yours, or
Mm.
vice versa? Or do we need to step out, step away and like tend to our own little selves?
Oh, cute. But yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also brings me to a point. I feel like Right now we have no capacity for any of this. It's like, oh, something big goes wrong, time to leave this partner. And there's just this like made up thing about what a good relationship is when it's like no conflict. And these
Yeah.
things are actually happen more when the union is so safe. So yeah, I would love to
Yeah.
hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there is, oh, this is a really common thing. Yeah, there's this belief that a healthy relationship should never have conflict. And I believe that in a healthy relationship, I don't want to say impossible. I always want to leave space for the universe to do its magic. But what I have seen is a healthy relationship will have conflict. If there isn't, usually either someone is abandoning themselves
Mhm.
are just afraid to speak up out of fear of being rejected. So they'll just go along with whatever's happening. Of course, that has an effect over time because you feel the person's heart more distant. So for us, we have this understanding that when something comes up, we bring it forward. We bring it to the light. There's no hiding. That's part of being in integrity with ourselves. There's no hiding or shrinking back. Of course, there is a time and a place. It's not like we're walking through the store and we're like, oh my God, there's this thing, you know? But that's also why it's important to have these consistent times to be together and to have whatever those current conversations are. But yeah, there is a lot to be said about creating space for the tough conversations and also allowing space for things to settle after they happen or after a rupture happens or you just really are not seeing eye to eye instead of trying to stay engaged in it and then neither of you are regulated and really seeing the bigger picture and it becomes a battle of egos, then sometimes giving that space to both self-reflect and work through the triggers and work through the wounding and do the embodiment things or whatever you need to do for yourself and then come back to that whenever you feel ready. That builds so much resilience and intimacy in the relationship that if you don't work through those things, you don't have that.
No, and you can feel it right away. I mean, I could always
Yeah.
feel it immediately when the energy shifts. It's like, and then when you pretend that it's not there, that's yeah, that
Yeah.
heart closing, the resentment, the distance, it's
Yes.
like so bad. So yeah, I love it's so simple that space is whether it's creating the space to talk or the space to reflect. That's such a good, easy practice.
Yeah.
And now on the other side, I'd love to hear more about intimacy and sex, and you talk about sex as like an erotic embodiment, and would love to hear how people can start to deepen this in the relationship and have that never-ending passion because I fully believe that that can be sustained throughout the entire relationship.
Yeah. Well, really, if you have this deeper foundation of safety and trust and real heart intimacy, then the sexual intimacy can keep getting better and better. Because maybe initially, when you don't really know each other that well, I know 17 years ago when we got married and we were having sex, of course, it's pleasurable and there's orgasms and everybody's satisfied, but there wasn't that depth, that soul and heart depth. So as you keep going into that deeper together and you're courageously having the conversations, not just about the emotions and the wounding and all that, but also about the vulnerable parts of our sexuality and our desires, our kinks, our dark side, all of that, and letting that be seen. That is the really risky stuff to reveal for a lot of people. And so when you're met in that place with acceptance, even if you're met with resistance, but then you work through that,
Mhm.
it's like, oh my God, I'm not fucked up. It's so like you really see me and you really see me and you accept me. That sets the tone for the most amazing sex. Not just the act of sex, but the entire erotic aliveness in the relationship. So for us, as we are staying current with each other, anything that is obstructing the flow of love, we address it.
Mhm.
We don't sweep it under the rug. That's what I learned to do growing up was if something's awkward or uncomfortable, you sweep it under the rug. So I had to learn this from scratch
Mhm.
in my marriage. I had no concept of what that was like to even have a confrontation or a difficult conversation. But so for us, we'll have the playfulness and little sexy banter and the little, remember what we did last night? And I really liked it when you did that. And just the, the face grabs and the hair pulls and this. smacks in the butt, and just those little things throughout the day that are really like foreplay at when sex ends and before the next sexual encounter begins. So there's always like these hot embers on, and as opposed to, okay, it's Wednesday, are we having sex tonight? 20 minutes before, do a little bit of foreplay and then stick it in. And that's how we used to be. That's how we were for a lot of our marriage. And this feels way better.
Yeah.
So I like to think of it more as the erotic aliveness and more than sex itself.
Mhm.
That's what makes sex so great, so great.
Yeah, and I think those moments are, like, so yum when they come up behind you and just, like, give you a kiss.
Yeah.
Like, just that softness and that playfulness throughout the whole day is just like I said, sometimes feels better than the actual act of sex, and it just feel it that can that little those little bits of connection because we really want that connection, and we don't just want it when we're in bed, so, uh
Yeah. Yeah.
do you want to be a part of an extraordinary trip of a lifetime where you'll be surrounded by open-minded, fun, and inspiring humans from around the world? You'll be in a space that is so safe you can express all of you, not have to hide or hold back the tears or the weird accents you love to do. The amount of unconditional love you will feel will make you feel unstoppable. You'll be in a tropical paradise surrounded by beauty in the Balinese jungle. Every day you'll eat delicious, healthy meals cooked by a local chef, and instead of cleaning up after, you'll head to the glass sauna and relax. You love growing and are ready to leap into the unknown and connect deeper to your spirituality. At the end of the week, you'll leave feeling like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders. You'll be smiling ear to ear and feel as light as a feather. I will take care of all of your needs for a week at the all-inclusive Alive to Enjoy retreat this December 2nd through 10th. You can book a call with me, Lexi, at alivetoenjoy.com/retreats. And I swear this will be hands down the best way to end 2023. All genders are welcome and all people who are here to make this world a better and brighter place.
Yes. And even when we know that we are in the space to potentially have sex, or that's what you both want to do, when you really slow down and like a couple nights ago, we were sitting on this bench. We have this bench at the foot of our bed that's like a little fancy bench. We can both kind of straddle it and look at each other, and we'll like hug legs around each other and just look at each other in the eyes. And I just started biting his neck. This is not new. Okay, but like listen, 17 years into marriage, we just discovered this 2 nights ago. So this is why play is important. Make space for it. Just explore your bodies. And for whatever reason, he was like really sensitive, like on his back. I started biting his back and it felt really good. And he was just responding in a way that I'd never seen him respond before to that. And he started doing it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It feels so pleasurable. So we just have this whole thing, and that was a big part of our foreplay. So you just leaving space for the playfulness and see what's coming alive, and maybe how your bodies are ready to surprise you.
Yes, yes. There's so and then that's the thing is like people think there's caps to pleasure and there's not. Like how you just described that. I love that. And there's so many more
Yeah.
ways for that to happen because there's so much depth and intimacy and so many things to explore. However, I do find that it can be hard for people when you're bringing up something like, "Oh, I didn't like that." How do you do it so that they don't
Yeah.
they're not like crushed?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a lot of what we learned in the kink context.
Mm.
And that is when there are some foundational understandings in that realm, which I love to teach in the quote unquote, vanilla context as well. It's just as important. And one bit is that when you don't like something, when your partner doesn't like something, or they ask you to stop, or they say, okay, it's okay, thank you for taking care of yourself. Instead of like, oh, I messed up. Oh my God, you're rejecting me. It does sting because it does. It stings when you do something and they're like, I'm not really into it, or I don't really like that, or that hurts. And so one of our mentors also, she taught like the oopsies and ouchies, because sometimes you're You're doing something and it's great, and then all of a sudden it's a little too much or a little bit of the wrong spot, and it's like, oopsies, okay. It takes the pressure, it diffuses the
So-
tension, makes it more lighthearted. But yeah, these little communication cues and just really communicating beforehand too about, okay, I would like to try something new. And my part is I'm going to also keep myself in check in when you say no, or you ask me to slow down, or you want it differently, to listen to what you want me to do instead of feel rejected by what you don't want me to do. And so also directing our guiding our partners on these new things of, hey, can you do this to the left a little more instead of like, oh my God, stop that, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's so simple, but it's like this, once you can switch that, move past that, like then you're going to experience so much more pleasure because you're both being satisfied instead of doing what you think they want or yeah, not listening that doesn't feel good. And it's like it just
Yeah.
doesn't feel good to them and it's okay.
And sometimes what felt good yesterday or last week or this morning doesn't feel good right now. And that's part of also just the deeper inner work in ourselves of being present with what's there now instead of what we think should be there.
Hmm. Yes. Yep. Our body is just like on the yoga mat. Every day you show up, your body can be different. So bringing
Hmm.
that into the bedroom.
Yes, exactly.
And for people that are like recovering from sexual trauma and sex is like it's still hard for them to build that safety, what are other ways they can build safety with their partner that isn't penetration?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, even when that question comes up, I'm like, oh, where anything, everything, like
Yeah.
anything that you would do with penetration, even just like take the dick out, like. And actually, that's a really great practice too, to just have these spaces where you just touch each other, you get into the sensation of your body, and or even sensation deprivation, like blindfolds or tying things, whatever the body is comfortable with. Okay, some things will people's bodies are not quite ready for, but just playing, just like cuddling naked and touching each other, doing some nibbling, just worshiping each other's feet, like God, really ritualizing that even,
Mhm.
and not having penetration as something on the menu, and just seeing what's possible without it. Because a lot of times when we have that to rely on, or where that's the default, that's what we're gonna do, we're not going to explore all these other things because that's it. Like we're there, we're done, and now sex is done. Which, by the way, even then, after penetration, there's so much that you can do to continue the erotic connection. It doesn't mean that the whole encounter has to be done.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. I experienced that for the first time with my last lover. Is that first just aftercare in general? I never felt that.
Yes.
That whoa, life changing,
Yes.
and just continuing it like it didn't just end there. So yeah, please speak a little bit more on that.
Yeah. Oh my God. So then that's another thing we learn in kink is the aftercare part. And I forget that I sometimes forget that it's so normal to just, when he comes, then he's out and they roll over and go to sleep.
Ugh.
And I know that everyone has different preferences and we don't want to force anyone to do something they don't want to do, right? But there's so much possibility in those little tender after moments and that afterglow to expand on the pleasure. So for example, cuddling. That's the simplest one. That's the simplest one. Cuddling, touching each other's faces, touching each other's skin. Maybe not the parts that are super sensitive from an orgasm, for example. But something that we like to do is rub each other's feet and touch each other's feet. And I love licking Ryan's toes. It just drives him crazy after sex. It feels different after his orgasm than it does before. So we've learned that also by experimenting, and just sitting on his, like straddling his stomach and just like holding his face.
Mm.
There are so many different things that you can do in that space. It's just staying connected and staying present instead of checking out. And that goes for either partner.
Yeah, and it's the worst. Like I personally, it's the worst feeling ever if the checkout happens, and that's how it used to be every
Yeah.
time. And now, and then experiencing the other, it's like whoa, like I want. We're so connected. Like that is the most vulnerable act I think is like that sexual intimacy. So when it just like that hard abrupt ending, that's not what my body wants. I want even more
Yeah.
connection. for that. So
Yes, it's like you feel so dropped otherwise.
yeah. Ugh, yum, I like that. And it's so simple, like, honestly, the cuddle is just a little cuddle after, like, keep holding me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated.
yeah. And I wanna talk more about divine union. So this is, like, a big term being thrown around all like, over the social media now. So can you explain what divine union is to you?
Oh, yeah, there are so many different connotations here. Because then we have the whole the soulmates and the twin flames and the karmic partners, and I'm not particularly attached to any of those labels.
Mhm.
So when I think of divine union, I'm think I here's what I think is each person that is in divine union with the source, first and foremost, right? They're not relying on each other to complete that. I cannot have, I believe, this sacred union with Ryan if I didn't first have it with the source, with that divine source. So there's that. We are ultimately, first and foremost, surrendered to that love. And through that, we get to love each other. So that is that true, and that's not a transactional love that it's like if you give me this, then I'll give you that. If where I trust his connection to source and he trusts my connection. And there is a deep reverence there. So for there to be a sacred union between two human beings, I believe there needs to be that sacred union within ourselves of also there's this whole this masculine and feminine within ourselves. And if we are not harmonized in that, that also kind of bleeds out in ways that are not very great in the relationship. So there's union with the source and union within ourselves, and then this union with our partner. And that love is nothing like the surfacey romance, quote unquote, love that we have grown up, most of us, seeing in movies or in books. And it's deeply devotional. Again, first to the source of love, to love itself, and then to each other.
It's, like, the best feeling. I don't think yeah, to me, it's the best feeling in the world, like, that is the ultimate goal is that union because, no amount of money, no amount of success, like, all these other factors, it doesn't compare to that building and devoting and committing to someone and being all in, you know? So it's
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Yes.
And so if someone is exploring and trying to find that, how can they start to call that in or know that this is that?
Well, the first thing is go back to the beginning, right? Like the sacred union with the source. So really, really anchoring into what that love is. And for me, it was a very conscious decision to embody love. Like I devoted myself to embodying this love and asking the question, how does love want to move through me? What would love have me do? And that really helped me to snap out of my, okay, here's my ego, my fear, my what I think that I need, but actually, no, that's just my entitlement. And there's a difference between entitlement and worthiness. It's like a pseudo expression of here's what I'm worthy of, is here's what I'm entitled to. So it really does bring all of that crumbling down. And when you do that work within yourself and you open yourself to that source of love and you call all of these different parts of yourself home, your inner slut, your inner witch, your inner crazy bitch, your medicine woman, all of these things, then you're not even focused on how do I call this in? How do I call this man in? Like it's what's meant for you is going to come. And so I would just remove the focus from trying to find him or her and recognize that, okay, it's coming. Like and this is not even that whole, okay, it's already coming, it's on its way because I've manifested it and I've declared it. So it's even deeper. It's like I really trust that the universe wants me to have what my heart really desires. And so I can just relax. And this also applies when you're already in the relationship and you feel like this is the relationship, this is the one, this is it. Because that was us. And we weren't there yet, but we just had to really have the faith to believe that it was going to happen in its timing.
Mm. Yes, I love that. It's so beautiful. And yeah, it's like focusing on really yourself, and that the love that you get to feel in this moment with or without that person is so essential and also becoming the best version and safest place for this person to come into your life instead of so focusing on like what can you get for them or what can they do for me and all these other factors. And it's like, oh, how can I, yes, be that embodiment of love. I love that.
Yeah, embodying love. And when you're embodying love and you're embodying the eros, the erotic, you're flirting with life. You're so engaged, so present with life. And what I have heard so many stories of is like, especially from women, right? Because I tend to have a lot of more of these conversations with women, is not just to finally just be feeling that, like that erotic aliveness, like they're just excited. They're letting the inspiration of life guide them. And then it guides them to something where they meet somebody.
Mhm.
It's not something that you can plan, like, here's the step by step plan.
Yeah, it's enjoying life. That's something so simple, but when we start to follow those little nudges like, "Oh, this feels good over here. Oh, I want to go this.
Yeah.
Oh, feel like maybe I should go over here." And yes, then that you're following that flow and the creative energy, which is always there, but we're so focused on like something so different, but it's enjoying life. It's that simple. And plus, like your joy is so for women in particular and to men, and like your joy is so magnetizing
Yes.
men. Like they love your joy,
Yes.
your playfulness.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, imagine if you're out there looking like for my missing piece. That's actually repelling and maybe attracting the wrong kind of wrong kind of man.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love this. And I just wish for everyone to be able to find unions like this because I think it's possible no matter what your background, no matter and most of us don't even have an example of this in our lives. Like we've never seen it. And it's like, okay, I want to create this for myself no matter what's happened to me and bring more of that into the world and for the children. And I also love to with your guys' story how it didn't start. You guys didn't start spiritual or like with all of this what what you have now, but it's like that can form no matter what's happening in your relationship and if you guys are committed to that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. If that is meant to be your journey, it will be your journey. If that's meant to be the person you do it with, then that'll be the person. There's also this unattachment to needing to cling on to something. And that is, I don't think I can really go into that, but I'll just say that.
Yeah, that can be a hard part to people always say don't be attached, unattachment. It's like, well, how do I actually do that?
Yeah, but still let yourself be fully in love and engaged in the whole experience. So I think our human selves, we form attachments, and that's beautiful and it's healthy. It's healthy to have attachment to your partner. I think where we're talking about the attachment is more of, in the spiritual sense, like attaching my happiness to you being a certain way. Because then I need to control you and keep you this way. Otherwise, I'm not going to be okay.
Mhm.
And that's a hard one to learn in real practice.
Yeah, releasing control is super, super hard. But that also goes back to your relationship with the source God. Like you got to surrender.
Yeah.
And if
Yes. And trust.
yes, the main thing is always trust, open, surrender. You're good.
Yeah. Yes. It's like, why is it so simple and so hard?
Um,
Oh,
and I'd love to hear what is one of your favorite romantic memories with your husband
oh my God. Oh, one.
or two.
Oh my, I have so many. Oh, I was think of like a more recent one. You know, I could go to like the bigger things, like when we have our like recently we had a little weekend getaway with just the two of us, which we hadn't gone on a trip, just the two of us, without the kids in maybe like 9 years. Because we're so used to just we can be us and when they're at school and around them and we'll go on trips and do things together. But that was just really that it was very different. It was very we loved it. We need to do this more. But then also just the little things like last night, this is a new thing, especially after all his body has gone through, where he just literally picks me up and throws me over his shoulder and like takes me up the stairs. I love this so much. Oh, I didn't know that I could do this. So yeah, the little romantic things. And then there's the bigger like events that stand out.
And what do you think romance is to you?
It is feeling that deep care, that thoughtfulness, that like, oh, I saw this and I thought of you, or I think you'd enjoy this, and really nurturing each other's hearts.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, yeah, it's such a gift to have someone's heart, and I hope people understand that and, like, realize that it's like giving when someone opens and gives their heart to you, it's so precious and it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Mm, yay. Okay, so if someone wants to work with you, where can they find you? What are you offering?
Well, all of the current things will be at lucilampe.com. And of course, come on over to Instagram and see what's popping over there, what's happening at Luci Lampe. And then any new offerings that are coming, I'll be sharing there. I do have a new course launching in January, so in a couple months, on for women, and it's wildly sovereign, and it's about embodying the sovereign feminine. So we're taking the dark and the wild feminine and the light feminine. So that's coming up. So anyone who pre-registers early, they'll get access to a bonus course and then a workshop that I'll be doing in February.
Amazing. And just to touch on it slightly, can you kind of share what the dark feminine is? Because yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So when we think of the darkness, okay, the darkness is not bad. It's not this like, oh, this is the scary place where all of our demons hide. It's it's what is unknown. So in that shadow of the feminine, it's what has yet to be discovered, reclaimed, taken back into ourselves. And there's a lot of power, a lot of gifts there. So when you begin to explore, for example, the dark goddesses like Hecate, Lilith, Persephone, there are so many. Was that and Kali? Kali, of course. The three that have been the most powerful for me have been Kali, Lilith, and Hecate.
Mm.
And so I get a lot of feedback on Lilith. They're like, "Oh, you have a lot of Lilith energy." I'm like, "I know." She and I were tight. We're tight. So this is not like, but when you learn how to really tap into those gifts of the dark, exiled feminine, and and embody them in a way that serves the truth, that serves love, that serves union and harmony and unity, it is so powerful because people can get into the dark feminine aspects but then stay in the ego side
Yeah.
of things, where it's like, now I just get to rebel and fuck the system and fuck men, and it's not integrated yet. So it's awakening and it's all new and it can be very intense. But yeah, that dark feminine is just really activating the parts of our feminine that have been exiled, that we have not, that have been too taboo for us to embody.
Yeah, and it's create that space too, because even just like our sacred rage can be
Yeah,
so uncomfortable when you first start and you don't
yeah,
identify as that or all these stories of why you don't want to go into it. But when you do it, it is wow, liberating and it feels so good.
yes.
But so how do you help like how does someone start to kind of lean more into that and trust in that they won't be like taken away by it?
I think there is a period of time where you kind of do get swept away. You kind of do go on into the deep end. Like you kind of have to.
Yeah.
That's kind of the whole thing about the feminine, is that she's endless depths. However, what I have found is that if you remember that you are tethered to the light, you're tethered. It's like you're not going to go spelunking in a dark cave without a bungee cord to come back out. But what ends up happening a lot of times is we'll go into that place and then we're like, oh shit, I'm stuck. There's no way out. I'm in a really dark place and I'm spiraling. And in those places, very much like in, for example, a plant medicine journey, when you get to a dark part, you've just got to surrender. You've got to surrender to what is, and surrender the fear to something greater than yourself, and trust. So again, open, surrender, trust. But yeah, there are some kind of dark, scary turns that you go into, but just remember that that's not the fullness of anything. It's just a little piece of it. That's not where you're stuck now.
Yeah.
So tether back to the light, come back, and bring the gifts back with you.
Yes, and just one thing to add, just naming it. Like, naming
Yeah,
what you're feeling, even if there's someone else around you that you can communicate that with too, so they understand, and instead of, like, trying to hide it or yeah, so
yeah. And giving it space too. Like in this room, I have had so many rituals of releasing rage and going deep into grief and like the angst and the desperation and the like, this is too painful, it's too much. And just giving that space to flow, like a wave that's breaking,
yeah.
and just let it run its course in a safe space.
It's so beautiful when you do surrender to to the wave, and it's like, and it brings you and you just ride with it. And then you always end up in or for me, when I like fully surrender
Yeah.
to it, in a place of peace at the other end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, one last question is, how can someone start to connect to these goddesses if they want to start to play with them?
Well, there are a multitude of ways. And what I started to do because of my roots, and I'm Peruvian, and a lot of my roots are indigenous there, South America. I felt very drawn to shamanic practices. So I started working with ancestors and letting them kind of anchor me and guide me into these darker realms that I was afraid to explore. So maybe for someone else that's like spirit guides or their higher self, or just a goddess, a specific archetype of goddess even. And a lot of it really, for me, had to do with just opening my heart and my mind to what was there. Part of my own journey too was getting into more of the witchy rituals, and I would, do the spells and declare I'm open to this and I'm receiving this into my being, light a candle, activate the energy, whatever, whatever. So I would say if there's a certain thing that is calling you, then explore that. If something you're like, oh, that's really not for me, like I don't want to dabble in this or that, then don't do that. But another thing too is just to look into maybe which dark goddess you really connect with, and just inviting that guidance in from a place of love. And always remember that it's always in a place of love, not fear. It's not, don't get those two confused.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, don't get it twisted.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I hope people join that. That course that's such a good way to begin the year. So I'm so
Yes.
grateful that you're bringing that in for everyone. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You made it to the end of the episode. So now it's time for our snuggly heart breath of the day. Place a hand or both hands, if it's safe to do so, over your heart and take a big breath into your heart center. Open your mouth and let it go. I'm so grateful to have shared this time with you. If you enjoyed this combo, please share with your besties and your fam. And if you're a visual person like me, fly over to YouTube and watch the video. If you want to do a random act of kindness today, please leave a 5-star review so more people in the world can get their heart snuggled. You're helping tremendously when you do this, so thank you so much. And as a gift for doing so, I'll give you my Soften Your Heart Medi that feels like an exhale and a hug from within. When you leave a review and email me the screenshot to heartsnuggles@alivetoenjoy.com, you can also find the email in the show notes and you'll get the free meditation. Sending you the warmest, comfiest hug and lots of unexpected blessings your way. Remember that every single person just wants to be loved. So how can you be loved today?